Sharing my screen. Gotta love technology. All right. So welcome. My name's Amber Lowry. I'm the program director for CyberUp. Just want to briefly go through what we're here today for and introduce the guest speakers. So National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We've had so many different webinars about just how to stay safe online. So today we're going to just briefly talk about CyberUp's mission, just in case you're not familiar with who CyberUp is. What is NCSAM? The October's events that's already taken place. So this is our last one. And then we actually have a couple guest speakers today. So for those of you who are not familiar, CyberUp's a nonprofit organization whose mission is to cultivate the cybersecurity talent pipeline. We do that through training adults through our apprenticeship program and inspiring youth through our Power Up Cyber Games. What is NCSAM? NCSAM is the National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, observed every October. It was created as a collaborative effort between government and industry to ensure every American has the resources that they need to stay safer and more secure online. We're excited to host a full month of cybersecurity awareness activities geared towards youth, adults, teachers, presented by Centene Corporation. Today is our last event. I will announce Mr. Gary Chan, president at Alfizo, LLC, and then we're going to pause. He's going to take some questions. So as he's talking, trying to think of any questions you may have for him. And then once that's done, then I will introduce Zahid Awar. He's the associate professor at Fanfan University. He'll kick off what Fanfan has to offer. And then he'll pass it over to me and I'll talk about CyberUp's apprenticeship program, just a high overview. And then we'll open it up for more questions after that. We are recording this session for those of you who have missed it or if you wanted to rewatch it for any reason. You can also rewatch some of our other webinars just in case you missed them. You could go to our website at wecyberup.org/Hacktober. The recordings that's already taken place was our kickoff event with guest speaker Perry Yee. He's the Director of Information Technology at the St. Louis Cardinals. We also had a session of securing devices at home and at work with guest speaker Jason Killam from the U.S. Air Force 42nd Cyber Operations Squadron. And then last week, we had securing internet connected devices in healthcare with guest speaker Brian Gant. He's a full-time cybersecurity instructor at Maryville University. All right, see, already moving on to our guest speaker. So I'm going to announce Mr. Gary Chan. He's the president at Alfizo, LLC. So Gary Chan is an information security specialist who's helped companies build and operate their security programs. He graduated in electrical engineering and computer science from MIT and holds 4 security certifications. He designed and deployed technology solutions to state agencies and federal programs that almost all Americans use frequently. He worked as the head of information security at Worldwide Technology and president of the FBI St. Louis Citizens Academy Alumni Association. He currently leads SSM's Health security organization as well as his own value-added reseller security company, Alfizo. He's commonly found in cybersecurity communities as speakers, venture fund evaluator, or mentor to cybersecurity startups. So let's please welcome Mr. Gary Chan. Step presenting.
Hey, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me to talk about connected devices. I'm going to begin sharing my screen. So let me go ahead and do that. Can all of you see my screen? All right, cool. So let's get started. Let's first open with what are connected devices. Connected devices are 2 devices that can interact with each other. In its simplest form, something like a TV and a remote control are connected devices. But when we talk about connected devices today, we're typically referring to Internet of Things, or IoT. These are devices that are connected to the internet and which can interact with other devices, whether in the same location or halfway around the world. This slide shows examples of connected devices, everything ranging from video game consoles to light bulbs to smartwatches to cars. From my watch, I can open and close my house's garage door when I'm across town. I can use my phone to turn up or down the thermostat's temperature or remotely start my car. IoT is part of our daily lives. My smartwatch records my heartbeats and tracks my movement throughout the day. This data could be stored on my watch or in the cloud, which are servers owned and operated by technology companies. IoT is invading everyone's homes. How many of you have light bulbs that you can control from your own phone? Or perhaps you turn on and off your sprinkler from your computer. Or you remotely lock and unlock your front door when guests visit and you're not at home. Of course, IoT is not isolated to use cases for you or me. Governments around the world are building smart cities that monitor human and vehicle traffic to more efficiently allocate resources. For example, manage street parking through sensors and dynamic pricing, and make life easier by automatically identifying people more quickly and pre-filling information. Every technology is hackable, and as everything becomes connected to the internet, like watches, door locks, and cameras, everything will be hackable. So what's driving innovation? By now, you've probably all heard of 5G, the newest wireless network technology. 5G will be 10 to 100 times faster than our current 4G. Besides speed, 5G can handle more devices simultaneously and reduce latency or lag. So why does this matter? With more wireless resources available, IoT manufacturers will be able to collect and use larger amounts of data, allowing them to provide even more services and features than before. Whereas right now, you're sometimes limited by how quickly you can transfer data between two devices. In the near future, that is much less likely to be a problem. Artificial intelligence is another area that is already driving innovation. Whereas in the past, we were building machines that could not upgrade themselves, now we are building machines capable of learning and improving on their own. Artificial intelligence already surpasses humans in some very specific areas. For example, Amazon is extremely successful at getting customers to click and buy recommended items, things that customers didn't even know that they wanted to buy. No employee at Amazon would be nearly as effective as that single Amazon machine at getting people to buy products. As the field of artificial intelligence grows, and as they start being incorporated into IoT devices, the use cases will expand and drive innovation. And of course, innovation will also be driven by competition. Many companies exist to make money, and the best way to do that is to make better products and services. So we have the means to connect, the speed of learning, and the drive to win. That combination will drive innovation. So how will the job market be? Analysts estimate that there will be 21 billion IoT devices in year 2025. With so many more devices, there will be more hacking. And with more hacking, there will be a need for more cybersecurity jobs. The conclusion is that cybersecurity skills will be coveted. So where will cybersecurity skills be needed? We have a significant need for cybersecurity specialists in Congress because they set policy. We need to set policy for how the government handles foreign and domestic hacking while protecting researchers and our own personal freedoms. That is a very delicate balance, one which is made even more difficult when the people handling policy do not understand the technical intricacies of cyber. Bringing these skills would be both valuable and lucrative to whoever does it. Of course, we have a need to develop both offensive and defensive tools and techniques They handle military conflict and law enforcement. Cyber is a growing field in every branch of government, not just the Department of Homeland Security, NSA, or CIA. And as we all know, corporations need to defend themselves against hackers and insider threats. Bringing these skills to the corporate world will help businesses protect what is theirs, including reputations, not just money. And the same conclusion, cybersecurity skills will be highly coveted. So in this presentation, we talked about how the Internet of Things will be evolving over the upcoming years and why that will drive the need for cybersecurity talent. Investing now in cybersecurity skills and knowledge will have a tremendous payoff later. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Good. So feel free to unmute yourself, ask him any questions. But I did have a few to get us started while you guys think of it, not to put you on the spot or anything. But first off, thank you so much for joining us today and spending your morning with us. Really appreciate it. So one of the questions we had was, how can we protect ourselves from attacks when using Internet of Things devices? What are some best practices?
Sure. So assuming that this is for personal use, I would say keep the devices patched. Buy from reputable manufacturers and vendors. Sometimes things are cheap because they have malware hidden in them. And if you know how, place your IoT devices on the guest network so that even if that IoT device is compromised, it won't affect any other devices on your network. So those are three things that I would do.
Okay. And by patch, does that just means we need to make sure and keep it updated?
Yeah.
Let's if we don't. Okay. Just click
Exactly, yeah.
the button. Got it.
Yeah, a lot of these devices will auto update themselves today. So basically just don't push it off.
Yeah, it's smart. And then what type of security breaches or attacks have you noticed since COVID? And is everyone, well, since everyone's working from home due to COVID, what kind of attacks have you been noticing?
So there's definitely been an increase in attacks on individuals and companies. And what's interesting is because everybody's working from home, hackers are basically attacking people while they're at home. And so there's been a significant increase in phishing and also a significant increase in illegitimate websites. So I think the phishing numbers, depending upon who you ask, are like 3 to 9 times more over the summer when businesses were closed. It's down significantly since then. But then in terms of illegitimate websites, there was thousands registered per day with the word coronavirus in the domain name. And what's interesting is that a lot of these websites actually had legitimate COVID-19 information on them, but instead, whenever you went to the website, while you were reading good information, it was downloading malware in the background or doing other malicious things. So those are a couple of ways in which hackers have been taking advantage of the situation. I hear a lot of background noise. Maybe it makes sense to mute some of the others who are not speaking.
Yep, muted. So how do you know if you're on a good website? Like, how do you know they've been spoofed?
Oh, unfortunately, it's not super easy for the average person. Because even when I go through it, I don't always look at the address bar. But that's something that we can all do, is look in the address bar and make sure it says, for example, Bank of America or whatever the correct thing is, the company name. Because sometimes they'll have like misspellings in there or other things where they're hoping you don't notice. So if you look in the address bar, that's one way of making sure that you're on the right site. But there are a lot of tools that you can use also. For example, there's DNS filtering. So if you know how to add something like OpenDNS to your router, you can traffic everything, send all of your network traffic through there before you go to a site, and it'll block some of the malicious things. There are a lot of different products that you can basically buy and install. And these are the things that companies will do for you as well. So if you were from home, connecting to the corporate network would basically run you through all of these security solutions that the company has at the network level.
Okay, it's good to know. All right, so we're talking about future of devices and all that craziness. So have you seen the movie Minority Report?
I have, yeah.
They're predicting and everything. Can you potentially see AI evolving so much that we're starting, the police or the government starting to try to predict behavior, and then just like in the movie, they arrest you before you even do it? Do you see like that ever crazy happening?
So we already kind of do some of that today. That said, it's in its early stages. I think in the US in particular, not necessarily in some other countries, but particularly in the US, we would probably not arrest people before they do something, but we definitely do things using the data at hand. So, for example, law enforcement uses AI to determine where crime is likely to happen based on past incidents. And this causes two things to happen. One is that law enforcement will patrol those areas more frequently, the areas that the AI predicts will have more crime. And sometimes there are changes made to the infrastructure to reduce crime. So, for example, there was this one city where they noticed that there was a lot of drug dealing going on. And they couldn't figure, and they didn't know why. They just figured, oh, that's just where people hang out. But when they put it into the computer algorithm, it actually said the reason that they're having so many drug deals is because that's where the only payphone is for miles. And so people were using the payphones because they didn't want to use a personal phone to do drug deals. And so what they did was they moved that payphone inside of a convenience store, basically inside of the gas station that was next to it. And then the drug, they stopped meeting there. And that's not something any human would have probably figured out. That's something that the AI did. And that's something that people did as a result of the AI. So I would say we're already halfway there. And really the main thing stopping us is I think there's not much of an appetite for the AIs to be doing that. But if everyone knew what people were doing with the AIs, I think there would be more of an outcry to some extent.
It's true. Yeah, that's kind of cool. All right. How do you see the cloud changing to support these new age of connected devices?
So first, I think the cloud will keep getting bigger, meaning Jeff Bezos will continue to have more and more money. The cloud will, I think, because a lot of people don't understand security and because it is a value add and people are willing to pay for it to an extent, the cloud will build more security into the fabric. So, for example, Amazon, rather than say, hey, why don't you build your application securely in our cloud? They'll say, we'll build security for you if you use our cloud. And so that means that there's going to be a lot more security architect jobs. And in fact, many IT infrastructure jobs are already disappearing and turning into IT cloud jobs today. I also think that from an offensive side, hackers will have more places to hide and can move quicker. So this will make it infinitely harder for defenders also.
Okay. And that you kind of already answered a little bit of my next question of what would you just guess to predict the next up and coming cybersecurity job or positions might be in the next several years?
So I think it's just really going to be kind of what we do today, but more sophisticated, more skill sets, more difficult as the world sort of evolves and there's more and more different technology. Both the breadth and the depth is going to be more, I think, more of the same, but more in depth and broader. More specifically, I'll say, I think government policy is really one area that if you were to start looking at today, that in 5 or 10 years, that's something that could be very, very good because not very many people do that. And so being able to do that, you'd be able to shape domestic policy. And because a lot of other countries look to the US, you'd also be shaping international policy, albeit indirectly. And I think that's going to be highly coveted. And then in terms of military, that's all the cool stuff you might see on TV. Offensive and defensive capabilities. The government's building that all the time. And they have very cool projects. So if you like really cool projects, go into the government. They may not pay you as much, but you're going to work on some really cool projects. And then corporate would be the reverse of that, which I think you're not going to work on very cool projects, but you are going to earn more money because the corporations are going to be attacked all, just this year alone. I would say, most of the companies have, or many of the companies were hacked. And it just didn't even make the news anymore because it's just so common. So all the ransomwaring, all of the hacking, all of the stealing, it's just not even making the news to some extent now.
That's crazy. Which is another reason why we need to diversify cybersecurity. This is potentially getting into government policy, you need a diverse workforce. Definitely. All right, I want to also be mindful of your time and open it up to any questions the audience might have. This fan does seem to drop off, so now's your chance.
This is Helena Shimolinsky. I'm the Information Security Officer at Neighborhood Health. I do have a question. It's kind of a follow-up to what you mentioned. You mentioned that folks should connect their devices to their guest network. But my question to you is around, with a lot of people now working from home and many using work devices as well as personal devices, what is your recommendation to protecting work information versus home information? Many of us use the same mobile device to access both personal and work email on the same device, etc. So I want to hear your thoughts on the best way to protect, business information versus personal information.
Sure. Nice to meet you, Helena. Excuse me. I'll sort of answer it in two different ways. One is as a personal end user, and the other is as a business, because I understand you're an information security officer, so you probably have a lot of influence on what the business does. In terms of the personal side, I would say it's a lot of training awareness. I recommend companies increase their security awareness training, both in terms of making sure that they cover some COVID specific things that are out there. I actually do like a presentation specifically on the types of COVID-19 types of scams and things like that that are occurring, making sure that people understand that, and then really encouraging folks to use the corporate VPN and to segregate their personal from their work, so that they don't commingle as much. On a business, from a business side, there are a lot of different tools that can be used, and depending upon the device itself. For example, if you're talking about mobile phones, you can containerize things. For example, like VMware AirWatch will do like a containerized portion on people's cell phones. So this is good if you allow BYOD, for example, bring your own device. If you containerize it, that eliminates a lot of legal issues and other issues, so that if that device is lost or whatnot, you're not worried about the personal stuff as the business, but you can wipe your personal stuff, and it also, you can have your own passwords and things like that. If you're talking about desktop use, whether it's something that's like a virtual desktop like Citrix could be very helpful. If that's not something that fits your business model, then making sure that you have like an always on VPN would be good, and making sure that you have a lot of investment in endpoint security over just network security, and make sure that you don't have split tunneling turned on, or at least minimize it if possible. There are a lot of performance issues that occur if you don't have split tunneling. So a lot of different things that can be done, but I would say make sure that all those security tools are there, up to date, and that you're using the right ones to fit your your use case.
Thank you. Happy to say we got it covered.
Awesome. If you don't, your auditors will make sure you do your healthcare.
Yep.
Can I add something, Gary?
Sure. What's your question?
So it's a really startling figure. You mentioned the 21 billion devices, IoT by 2025. It's funny, I had a friend of mine call me, the old college mate, He's working at this big car company, US-based car company up north. And he was interested in recruiting students. So he was asking me, hey, he's a computer science / cybersecurity person. And I was joking with him. I was asking, hey, you're a computer science person. What are you doing working at a car company, And he was telling me, Zahid, you perhaps don't know, it's a modern car nowadays has over 300 IoT devices built inside it. And
Very interesting stat.
yeah, and he told me there's for the the car that they're developing 5 years down the road, it's going to have 500 apps. So how many apps does your car have, Gary?
I have no idea, but that is incredible. I know that over the past few years, the number of embedded device security architects and application security analysts has really gone up, and a number of those are actually in the car industry because of the reasons you explained. I didn't know those stats, so it was very interesting.
Another thing about what you said about AI and people not getting arrested, at least until they've proved that they are guilty. I was reading up about unethical AI. Would you speak to that? I saw this news about AI being used for recruitment. So there's an AI algorithm that automatically goes through resumes, and there's bias in AI. They've seen that there's a gender bias, and there's other places where AI is being used to look for criminal-minded people, and that the AI wasn't doing its, it was just preferring one race in its algorithms over the other. Do you see that a lot?
Yeah, that happens quite a bit. For those who maybe are interested in AI, the way that AI works is it requires a few things. One is the algorithm itself, which usually is not really that biased. But another thing that it needs is the training set, and that is what's usually biased. So probably in the examples that you described, right? Let's say that what happens is you train the AI on the training set. So the algorithm is supposed to basically minimize the error distance using mathematics. But in I guess regular terms, it's saying, okay, it asks, so the humans will say, look, these are 100 resumes. Normally you'd have more, but it was 100 resumes. These 70 are really great, and these 30 are not so great. And then we would give it to the AI and say, learn this. Well, a lot of times what happens is because the people who are writing the algorithms, or rather creating the training sets for those algorithms, they themselves have some sort of inherent bias. And it may not be like on purposeful, right? Maybe they live in a neighborhood where it's really, one type of demographic. Well, they only have data for that demographic. And when they feed it into there and they say, okay, well, it looks at it and it says, oh, in this case, I'm going to learn that everybody with this demographic is a good person, and therefore everybody else is bad. And so this type of thing happens all the time because the training sets are not comprehensive. What's kind of interesting is that here in the US, we hear a lot about bias for facial recognition, where white people versus black people and how the algorithm will treat it differently. A large part of that, one is, yes, there are some, the darkness in the photos, there are some problems with making the templates because it's not able to actually discern some of the features, but a large portion of it is the training set itself. It's primarily white because those particular researchers that put together those training sets, which basically everybody uses because it's one of the largest training sets, has more white people. So in the US, it's white versus black. But if you go to China, they have a ton of faces in their training sets, but they're all almost Asian, as in Chinese Asian. And so it actually doesn't work very well for Indians. So it's actually Chinese versus Indian. It's kind of interesting, but it's, I would say in most parts, from an unethical standpoint, in a way, yes, the outcome is unethical, but it was not because of an unethical process. It's just because the inputs that were into it have some biases inherent in it that were not necessarily purposeful. And if you just go to different cultures, even with the same algorithm, you'll get a different bias.
Wow, that's very interesting. It goes back to what you said earlier about people being educated about not just cybersecurity, but AI as well, right? So we could make our AI, all our algorithms not be, biased and racist.
Yeah, agreed. Very hard problem.
All right.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up on that question?
Yeah.
Because what I heard you say is that the algorithm itself is not what creates the actual outcome. It's the training set. So is there anything that, organizations can, I guess, use to mitigate some of those outcomes that may have some inherent biases?
Yes, and let me clarify first. I would say in general, so both of them matter, both the algorithm and the training set matter. In general, I was saying that the training set usually matters more than the algorithm, but they both do matter. In terms of what can be done, there's a lot of research that goes into it. Like MIT, I know, is leading a lot of those efforts to basically set guidelines for training sets. And basically, if people will follow those and say, look, let's make sure that we really get a more comprehensive set of things, whatever it is, whether it's cars or people or images or whatever it is, that, you can reduce the bias. The problem, however, is, because of the way that we as humans are wired, it's almost impossible for us to identify all of the possible variables that the AI can actually identify that we don't even know exists. So, for example, if you're putting in pictures of cats, the computer is going to identify that 4 legs is and paws and stuff like that are things that are variables. But to us, we may not have thought of that. And so we may not do that. So a lot of the guidance really is based around kind of law and policy, which is why I suggested that government policy is something that we're really lacking. And so what we look at is like Title IX, right? It talks about whether we have gender, race. They list out a number of these things. And so for now, a lot of the guidance is based on those very specific criteria to say that we should not be discriminating or biasing based on that. But beyond that, it becomes very, very difficult, and there's not a comprehensive solution to that other than get as much data as possible. Unfortunately, even that is still biased, as we talked about before, because if you're getting all of it from the same area of the US, for example, that in and of itself is biased, even if you have more and more data from the same area.
Is it helpful to and I'm certainly not an expert in this area at all, so my question may not make sense, but is it possible to establish multiple training sets and from a diverse group of individuals and then take the results of the cumulative? I don't know if that's making sense, rather than one type of individual, right?
It does. And so you can do that. And that is what is called the voting algorithm, where you basically do like 3 or more, but generally it's 3 different sets and see if you get to the same outcome. And then when you don't have the same outcome, then basically 2 out of the 3 wins. And if they're completely different, then you have to figure out how to arbitrate between the 3. So yes, that is there. The main problem with that is that assumes that you have a large enough set of things to divide up. Because if you're just basically feeding the same data sets, if you don't have a large enough set, then you're not training it well enough. So if you have one picture of a cat and you say this is a cat, and it's really hard for the computer to learn. So it assumes that. But I would also say in general, if you take all of that and put it into one, it normally does do a better outcome than having 3 separate ones, unless you're testing 3 different algorithms also. So there are certain times when it's optimal to do it the way that you've described, and other times when it doesn't make sense.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Been some really great questions. Good discussion. Okay. Well, you did leave your contact information just in case people want to shoot you an email after this. But thank you so much for joining us. I know you have to jump off and move on to your next meeting, but we really appreciate the discussion and thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have Dr. Zahid Awar. He's a cybersecurity expert and an associate professor at Fontbonne University in St. Louis. Dr. Awar is a graduate of the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He has worked as a software engineer and researcher at Motorola, IBM, Intel, National Center for Supercomputing Applications, or NCSA, Xflow Research, and CERN, or CERN, on various projects related to information security, operating systems design, and data analytics. Dr. Awar has authored over 80 technical articles in his domain and is a Security Plus certified. His research interests include cyber threat intelligence and the security of the Internet of Things. So let's welcome Dr. Awar.
Thank you, Amber. And top of the morning to everyone. I'm just going to be following up on what Gary was, telling us so many scary facts about everything being hackable, right? So, well, I just want to say that due to the recession and the companies are, downsizing their workforce, they're reducing costs, businesses are closing, countries and people are finding it difficult to sustain themselves. So much like Darwin's theory of evolution, we are now in the survival of the fittest phase, right? And so like organisms, the tiny organisms where with the genes better suited to survive, people with the industry relevant skills suited to tackle the business challenges of today will thrive. And so we are seeing the pandemic is accelerating the digitization of the workforce. Almost all but the most essential occupations are now digitally mediated. So individuals are working from home, restaurants are converting to app-based takeout and delivery, retail stores are serving customers with curbside pickup and online ordering. Musicians are holding concerts online, and schools are moving trainings and educational programs onto these online modalities. Healthcare workers, they are relying on the telemedicine and pre-screening applications to cater to every patient. And so we are seeing retail and e-commerce sectors now making use of these smart payment systems to reduce human contact. And so it's the uncertain times like these where technology is what people will turn to for solutions. So the topic at hand, what Gary was talking about, especially is so due to all this need for automation, one key technology this pandemic has identified is this Internet of Things, IoT. And so there are many opportunities for the machine-to-machine interactions and data captures. And therefore, we are going to see a lot more roles in IoT architecture, analysis that are going to, and these are really going to surge. Now, while there's going to be automation, that doesn't mean that firms are no longer going to need human resources. right? But in fact, very far from it. Now, in order to be successful, companies are going to need to rely on people that can oversee their automation programs. They'll need people that can analyze data, that can develop insights. And so if networks are virtually running themselves due to automation, then companies will need to focus on hiring people with data science and data analytics skills so that they can train these algorithms to run their networks better. Uh, and, 4 years in a row, the data scientist has been named the #1 job in the US by Glassdoor. And then Gary was talking about AI, right? So even amidst this, all the lockdown and the ongoing recession, there are websites, there are apps, there's this communication that's required to operate 24/7. And so there, the AI specialist is going to be a very critical resource to have. And then as new technology comes, more and more companies are going to become dependent upon it. And so hackers are going to find easy targets. In fact, cybersecurity incidents, if you look at the stats these days, they've increased many-fold since this transition to remote working. So cybersecurity is definitely going to become quite a significant cause of concern. So I have a slide here that I want to share. Let me see if I can get this to work. Share screen. Okay, so I was looking at this stat. Cybersecurity jobs are already, even before the start of the pandemic, they were going unfilled. But there's this recent report by Gartner, there's cybersecurity labor shortage and COVID-19, and they're saying that it's a 65% upswing in demand for US information security professionals this year. And so that is 3.5 million unfilled jobs by 2021. It's enough to fill 50 NFL stadiums, literally. And so I'd like to talk about our school. So as Amber mentioned, I'm an instructor at Fontbonne University. We are a small private Catholic institution based in St. Louis, Missouri. And just very recently, 2019, we were accredited by this international accrediting body known as ABET. And at the time, we were one of only 7 in the world to achieve this designation. Our cybersecurity graduates have a 100% placement rate, and our program is informed by industry tech leaders. So we have, several companies in the area: Emerson, Enterprise, MasterCard, Monsanto, Edward Jones, Mercedes-Benz, Midwest Bank, Claris. So their top cybersecurity leadership works with us to help us develop our curriculum, because they are the ones who hire our grads, and so they tell us on the kind of coursework that we need to design, and then they work closely with our students to make sure that we are acting as a feeder to their their workforce. So we have several hands-on courses. Our program is designed so that we have three majors: math, applied math, we have computer science, we have cybersecurity, we have data science. And so our students get to pick from a number of areas because, like I said, the new cybersecurity specialist who's going out in the world, if he can have these skills of data analytics and he has the programming skills and the AI skills, then he has a recession-proof job, so to speak. And so we have several courses the students choose from, things like telecommunications, cryptography, digital forensics. We have cloud security and IoT, reverse engineering, IT audit. We've also have a partnership with CyberUp, so our students can be a part of their apprenticeship program and get some real-world experience. And so I would definitely recommend anyone who's looking for getting their hands dirty with cybersecurity, learning more about this field, then definitely do contact us. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Yeah, so maybe I'll also kind of dive into a little bit of the pipeline, how we can get people trained in this field, and we can just open it up for your perspective as well too, since obviously you're in the field, you've written so many documents about it. Yeah, you would have great input. So at CyberUp, we feel like you get to choose your own adventure. No one path is the correct way. It's whatever works for you at this time. So Fonfun University has a great cybersecurity program. I know there's several out there, but sometimes maybe you're not ready for college or whatever. CyberUp also has an apprenticeship program that we can take anyone off the street as long as you have that desirability, the aptitude, that grit to learn this, since this is a lifelong learning type career, we can get you spun up and trained to be ready to be placed in our apprenticeship program. So we focus on getting candidates ready at the Security Plus certification level. And then we place you at similar companies. So Dr. Anwar said that they're placing their candidates at. But we also view our apprenticeship program very complementary. And this is why we're working on partnering with Fonfun University to help get their college students, they get in-class instruction, and then we can help work on getting that on-the-job training while they're still in college. So once they graduate, they can earn their bachelor's degree, they can earn some certifications and real hands-on experience. What we've noticed is that companies really want someone to have 5 years of experience, like a CISP level certification, which doesn't exist. So between Fonfun University and CyberUp, we're trying to work on helping create that unicorn that companies are looking for. So you have different ways to get into this field. No way is the right way. It's just there's so many options available. And especially if we're talking about the future of AI and the importance of diversity in this field, we really do need all kinds of people getting into this field, not only on a personal level, just protecting your own home or your kid who's remote learning, but just being smart in the workplace. But you can actually even upskill into cybersecurity because every company needs help in their IT department, cybersecurity department. So you can always go back to school, join our apprenticeship program to upskill yourself into this type of role. Because as you saw earlier, a 65% upswing since COVID, that's crazy. That blew my mind. So yeah, I want to kind of give you a high level of that, but feel free to unmute yourselves, ask us questions about getting into the career field, or what training do you recommend, what certifications. Make sure and open it up. So, Dr. Anwar, is Fontbonne doing their schooling remote or are you guys in person?
Yes, like all other colleges, we have moved many of our courses online. Now students get an option. So we have both in-person as well as online classes. Sometimes students prefer coming into especially with the labs, and so some students prefer coming in, working with face-to-face with an instructor. And so we have different modalities. In fact, with some courses, there's actually both options. So students can, if they feel comfortable, they can come in. Otherwise, they can take the online version of the course.
Nice. Have you noticed your students adjusting well to that?
In the beginning, I would say we were all new to this new trend. And it took us a while to get comfortable to the new norm. But I feel now that people are adjusting, with their schedules, and it's being able to learn online is a learning in itself, right? So people are now getting more comfortable with this.
Nice. Yeah, I think we've noticed that too on our end, having to change everything to online, and some of those challenges are just getting used to it and in a certain pace. You did mention about due to COVID, everything is kind of moving to touch-free type payment. What are some of the risks kind of associated with touch-free payments? Is there anything we can do to kind of protect ourselves while we're because I remember seeing the Square device coming out that you just wave your card over it and boom, you paid for it. So I don't know if you're able to talk to any of that, but I know you kind of mentioned it. So that was kind of my question for you.
Yes, and that's a good point. There are several payment card technologies out there, and it goes back to this whole notion of internet connected devices or IoT. The one that is, it used to be cards just the big magnetic cards. And we all know that those are not considered safe anymore. And so they've been started embedding chips in them. Now, more recently, it's our phones, and the phones have this technology called near field communication. The inherent protection that that technology has is that it's extremely low range. So your phone has to be very, very close to the detector in order for it to be able to read off your financial information. So that is the protection. Now, there have been attacks where people have shown that they came up with their own dummy detector. So, placing something in the store or which was hacked rather than being the real thing. And so inadvertently you brush your phone against it and it reads off that information. The newer protocols with the phones for the near field, they have been so far doing well. So I haven't seen a lot of incidents come up with that. But you never know, right? Because this is, as people get more and more used to these technologies being used, then the hackers come up with new ways of breaking things.
Yeah, you always have to stay vigilant. Just slow down, think about it. All right, I know we just hit 11 o'clock. I do want to open it up. Any other questions before we wrap it up? Don't be shy.
Cricket.
I know I'm working on my pregnant pause, which is really difficult when you're on the screen.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for hosting this, and thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Okay, yes, I take the silence as known as any further questions. So yes, we really appreciate you joining us today. A lot of great questions, a lot of great points you brought up too. Papon University is amazing. They're lucky to have you. It's great. Good stuff.
Thank you.
Lucky to partner with you guys. Okay, well, I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.